What's up, everybody? All right, so I had a Skype lesson with a great singer-songwriter, and she's transitioning from keyboard to guitar. She does play guitar, so she already does have some experience, but she's definitely not as proficient as she is with the keyboards. And there's some major hang-ups that I see with everybody. So this can go for beginner players getting into chords as well. And the reason that it can also go for some players a little bit more down the road is this is a little bit of like a refining exercise. So let's get to the main hang up. Now this happens both with beginner players, and it also happens with more established musicians. Like she's an established singer-songwriter that is transitioning. Now, the reason that it happens in both is it's the transition from one chord to the other, right? If I'm just going from G to C, that's it. That's all I'm going to do. For an established musician, they know they can't move as quickly, and they want to. Just like, so with this particular student, that is an easy transition for her on the keyboard. No thought at all. There's a little bit more of a thought process here, which means there's also a real wanting not to sound like this, you know, kind of fishing around for the chord, wanting to nail that chord right away. And that just creates a little bit too much time. Now, the other reason that this happens as well is over-checking that chord. This happens so much in a more beginner student, it's a lot of looking over, all right? Getting everything set, looking down, even though it doesn't really matter because you're kind of playing almost all the strings and the strum, right? And then kind of moving everything back, going back to this opening position, right, where you're not utilizing the fact that your fingers are already down on the strings. You don't need to lift them up. So those are two reasons why we get hung up from one chord to the other. So I want you guys to try this. The one exercise is, now I have a metronome. It's set to 73. Set it at your easiest speed. But whatever chord you choose, I'm just doing G to C as an example, is playing. Don't let yourself change at all, or slow down, I'm sorry, for the change. No matter what, even if it sounds like this, I don't care. Don't let yourself slow down. That metronome is going to push and push and push and squeeze that timing down. Because if you can strip away the over checking to make sure that the chord is absolutely perfect and absolutely right away, and then if we can also cut down on the amount of time that it actually physically takes, then there shouldn't be that much of a hang up between the two. All right, so this is going to force you to start cutting away at unnecessary time between each chord. Now this does work, again, bar chords. If you guys are having a tough time with your bar chords, whatever it is, okay? I will also do it with some harder changes. You know, if we have some like jazz stuff that we got to get through, we got to make some of those changes, even adding melody and stuff like that, in with just cutting down on the amount of time that we're taking. So now the next part is, don't always go back to open position, and this definitely happens. Right, we kind of go back here and then we bring everything down. I did a video on this before. I want you guys to try this. Turn the metronome off. This is a different kind of training. All right, it's just don't let, if we're doing G to C, we're doing this G, particularly if you guys are doing the double threes on the bottom, that's totally fine. But don't let those three fingers off the strings at all. All right, this does create more motion in a sense, because you kind of have to put your fingers down and fish them all around the strings to not lift them up, but that's fine. That's just counteracting the fact that we're kind of always lifting up and going back to this position before finding your strings. So what you want to do is a lot of people are creating another move point. What I mean by that is, this is G and this is C, and instead of just going from G to C, they're creating another move point, which is just this open nothing, to then get to the next chord, right? And then back again. So this will help you cut down on that by not allowing your fingers to lift up. It's a little bit of a muscle memory exercise too. It'll help you guys keep your fingers down and not always going back to this third position, this kind of open position. So those I want you guys to definitely check out. And another main issue, once the chords start getting a little bit more comfortable. There's something I'm always stressing with our right hand, especially with some of the piano players, just because there's a little bit of, especially with the actual piano and then electric keyboards are kind of designed the same way. Now I'm not a piano player, but there's a little bit of there's some mechanism between your fingers and that little thing hitting the actual string. And right here, it's right. You're making the sound with the pick. So we end up having a little bit more control over that volume. We can get super, super light and super, super heavy. I want you guys to start super light. I want you guys to be training this 1 to maybe 20% volume. I want you to stay in there, okay? So a little bit more like, this is super beneficial. If you guys are not staying in that zone and you're jumping up, then you really only have this to work with, this kind of like 60 to 80%. You start getting tired. It sounds really rigid. It sounds a lot like, right? And you want to be able to add more dynamic. And also, that's a little too forceful. If you want, I want you guys to train a little bit lighter. See how light you can make it. Same deal. Don't add too much motion. If you guys can kind of get this, a little bit of this doorknob turn kind of style, a little bit more loose in the wrist. That's actually going to help you get louder and louder, but then you'll never lose the lower volume. Being able to switch between the two, obviously that's a little bit drastic, but is going to give you stylistic and more professional options rather than just this full force, unless the tune calls for it, but this full force like 50 to 65, I don't know, I usually say like 60 to 80% volume. So those are the main aspects I want you singer-songwriters to try. Let me know if that helped.